What is going on, guys, and welcome to most comprehensive navbar video ever. In this video, we're going to create 9 different navbars. We're going to start with the most basic one over here. You can see the only thing we're going to add is a transform, CSS transform property, so they would be spinning 360 degrees. Then we're going to make our navbar all the way to the top, so as we're scrolling up and down, it's staying on the top, but still we're going to have this transform property, so there still would be spinning 360 degrees. After that, we're going to create a fixed sidebar over here, but you can see that what we're going to do is that we're going to change this transform property, then it's actually going to be moving from left to right, but still as we're scrolling up and down the page, the navbar is still staying here. And after that, we're going to create our first drop down menu from our navbar, right? So over here you can see that this is going to be our first drop down menu, and after that we're going to look how we can actually create it to the sidebar. So we have a sidebar that we can also create over here, this drop down menu, and after that we're going to create multiple drop down menus over here like this. So we have not only one, but we actually have a second one, and after that we're going to create a transparent navbar exactly in the middle of our banner, but it could also be our web page, and you can see that it's sitting exactly vertically and horizontally in the middle, and it is actually transparent, and it's going to have this border as we're hovering, right? And after that we're going to create a multiple drop downs again, but you can see that all my buttons are going to be a transparent also, and we're going to add some more drop downs over here. There's going to be one, and then there's going to be second one, and we're going to learn how we can add as many as we want. And last but not least, over here we're going to create a responsive navbar that as we're scrolling up and down the page, as we're making the screen bigger and smaller, you can see that I can toggle it up and down, and this is going to be my banner that's going to be sitting right underneath my navbar. But even if I make the screen bigger, you can still see that how it's working and how we have this hover effect over here. So let's stop being lazy, let's start coding, and let's fire up the text editors and let's get to work. So how do we create a simple navbar? Now the first thing we obviously would need to do is actually create a HTML skeleton for the navbar, and you can see that right now I have very basic HTML document that just has a couple of basic tags over here. And the title could be, I don't know, simple navbar, right? Simple navbar. And we're going to be using, again, just HTML5 and CSS3 for creating this simple navbar. So over here, I'm just going to create a simple unordered list. So over here, I'm just going to say that this is going to be unordered list. However, it's going to be sitting within a nav tag. So over here like this. So over here, we're going to create a unordered list over here like this, and we're gonna have like, I don't know, let's say like 4 list items, right? So it's gonna be a li over here, and then there's gonna be a link, and the link href is gonna have a hashtag, and over here we're just gonna say that this is gonna be home, and then we're gonna say that we would want to select the line and just copy this line, let's say like 4 times, and this is gonna be a info, and this is gonna be about, and this is going to be a, I don't know, survey, something like this. So now that we're done with this, let's actually go ahead and create a style tags within our body. Within our head tags over here like this. And let's just create a simple navbar, right? Let's style the simple navbar. So over here, I'm just going to say that this is going to be a style tags. And the reason for that, I don't want to create a external style sheet because I think it's just going to be a little bit more noticeable what we're doing. And the first thing what I would want to do is actually select all the elements and tell that I would want all the elements to have margin 0 and a padding 0, right? And the reason for that is just it's going to be easier for us to work if we don't have some preset paddings and margins. Now after that, what we would want to do is actually style the unordered list, which is the parent element for list items. So over here we would use the unordered list selector, and the first thing we would want to say is list style and list style type over here like this to be none, because we want to get rid of these annoying little circles on left hand side when we have a unordered list items, right? Then we want to say that line height let's say we're going to create some, I don't know, 60 pixels, something like this. And the actual height also we're going to set to 60 pixels. And the way we're doing it right now, we're pretty much setting these list items to be exactly in the center of our unordered list. Then we're going to say that we would want a background color, right? So background color, and let's say this is going to be a dark gray, something like this. And you can see the problem right now is that my list items are displayed over here as blocks, right? So I would need to somehow come up with a way so they're actually in line, right? However, before I do that, I'm just going to say over here, text align, this is going to be center. So all my list items are in the center. And now we can go and start styling actually list items. And again, the first thing what we would need to do is actually say display. And we're going to say that this is going to be display inline block. And now I can see how easy it is to actually make them from display block to display inline block. And obviously we would have to use the display property. And over here we can just specifically say what would be the width. I'm going to say like 150 pixels. But you can see because my screen is so small at this point, you can see that they don't line up, right? But as you make a bigger screen, they're actually all lining up really well. So let's just make it a little bit easier. Let's make 100 pixels, right? So then they all are sitting here that in our live preview. So when we're working, we can actually see that they're still in line. And after that, what we want to do is actually start styling links over here. And we would want to say that first property we would want to change is actually display and display block. And the reason why we want to change it to display block, because we want to actually, as we're hovering, we just don't want to have a hover only when we're hovering over the text. We would want to hover as we're hovering the whole link, right? Even as I'm hovering left, right, and top, bottom, you can see that it's still working as a hover, right? And the reason for that is because it is display block. And after that, again, we would want a text align, or we would want text align center. And over here, we're going to say the text decoration none is to get rid of these underlines, right? Text decoration, and we're going to say none, right? So that's how we got rid of those underlines. And then we want to say color, and we're going to say color chocolate, something like this. So now you can see that they got a color. Now the reason why I put it over here, text underline center. So let's imagine that you have text align over here, let's say to the right, right? So I write right for the unordered list. So now I can see how all they move to the right. However, if I would get rid of this text align center, you can see how they're all pushed all the way to the right because they're not aligned actually in the center. They're all aligned for the list items also to the right. So therefore we're over here writing text align and we say center, and then they're nicely pushed back. Now obviously if I have over here center, then it doesn't really make much sense to write over here center, but I'm just showing you what happens if we have different alignments for our parent element, that it does matter how we're actually working with this child element over here. Well, in this case, descendant. Now, one more thing that I would want to do is actually this transform property. But transform property, I would want to use actually transition property first. So over here, I'm going to say transition, right? And transition property. And here I'm going to say transform. And transform is going to be 1 second. And I'm just going to ease out, right? Ease in, out, right? Ease, and over here in and out, right? So now we're pretty much done with list items. Now let's work with the list items when we're hovering, right? So it's going to be list item, and here over here we're just going to say that as we're hovering. So we're going to write a pseudo class hover. So now when we're going to be actually hovering over our links, then we're going to be changing the value. So over here I'm going to write transform, and I'm going to say rotate, and this is going to be 360 degrees. So now this is when we're actually, as we're hovering, you can see over here what's happening, right? That they're actually spinning 360 degrees. Now, a couple of more things that we can add as we're hovering. We can say that this is going to have a border, and the border is going to be 2 pixels solid black over here like this. And after that is going to be border radius, border radius. You can see that I'm struggling just to write a simple thing. Border radius is going to be 5 pixels. So here we go. Now we have a nice border radius as we're actually hovering over, and our list items are actually spinning, right? So you can see how easy it was actually to create a very basic navbar that has these little tiny CSS properties. So how do we create a top fixed navbar? So again, you can see that we have a very simple HTML file over here, and obviously again the first thing we would need to do is actually create a HTML structure for our top fixed navbar. So over here I'm just going to create a nav element over here, and then again I'm just going to create a unordered list, and within that unordered list I'm just going to create a couple of list items, and I'm going to say that they're going to have a anchor tag over here like this, and I'm just going to say that they were going to have a, let's say that over here I'm just going to have a home, and after that I'm just going to copy this a couple of times. I'm going to say copy it like, let's say 4 times. I'm going to save this, and now I can see what I have, right? So I have like 4 list items that have home, right? Here again we're just going to write about, and over here we're just going to say that this is going to be a survey, something like that, and this is going to be a drop down, right? I mean, you can create whatever names you would want. And obviously over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a actual, let's say, a document that would be underneath. So here I'm just going to say div, and it's going to have a class, and I'm just going to give it a class of box. And over here I'm just going to have a heading 1, and I'm just going to repeat it multiple times with hello world, right? So I'm just going to copy this and just many times, right? So this is what we have right now. Now obviously we would need to create a CSS to actually style it, right? So over here again we go to our head tags over here like this, and we're going to create a style tags over here, and we're just going to start styling. And the first thing that we want to do is actually again style all the elements to have margins and padding 0. So I'm going to say margin 0, and I'm going to say padding 0. So now you can see that right away they all moved again to the left and to the top, and this really helps us that we don't need to worry about some default paddings and margins. And after that we're going to start working with our unordered list, and I'm going to say that I would want my unordered list to actually have a width to be like 100% over here like this, and I would want it to be already to the top and left, right? Top over here I'm going to say 0, and over here I'm going to say left to be 0. And the reason why I'm writing these dimensions over here, because if we would want to be this unordered list to be all the way on the top as we're scrolling up and down, actually we would need to have a property position to be fixed over here like this. So now you can see what's happening, that as we're scrolling up and down, right, we just don't have many hello worlds. So let me just create a couple of more so we can scroll a little bit down. So you can see over here what's happening, right? So it's kind of in the background as we're scrolling up and down. It's actually sitting here on the top. Now we haven't given any background color or nothing, that's why we cannot see it, but we're going to do that actually right this second. So we continue over here with this styling of a unordered list, and what we're saying is that we would want a list style type to be none over here like this, and then we're going to say that this is going to be height of 60 pixels, and we're going to say that a line height also is going to be 60 pixels because we want them to be all equal. And after that we're going to say that the background color is going to be gray, right? So we're going to go with background color to be like dark gray over here like this. Now again, my list items are not in line, therefore you can only see this right now, right? But you can see already what's happening. We have over here this a unordered list, and as we are actually scrolling up and down, you can see that this background color actually stays. After we have added a background color dark gray, let's add a text align center over here. And again, you can see what's happening right now on the right hand side. And now let's jump to the list items. So over here, we're going to say again that we would want to display to be inline block over here like this. So we have inline block. So now I can see right away how all my list items turn into the inline block. And now I can see that pretty much I have already my nav bar. But over here, I'm just going to say that I would want a width to be, let's say, like 150 pixels, something like this. Or maybe, you know what, again, let's make it smaller so it all fits in one page, in the smaller page that we're working right now. So now I can see what's happening, where actually we have already these list items. And after that, let's start styling again a anchor tags, right? Our links. So here we write a ULLIIA. And here we're going to say that we would want to be, again, to be display block. And the reason for that is if we don't have it in display inline block, you can see we can only click it as we're hovering over the text, right? But if we write display inline block, now you can see that even if I'm just hovering over here, you can see it's already treating it as a block, right? As a link, I'm sorry. Now over here, we're going to say again the text align to be center. Now after that, we would want to get rid of these underlines. So we're going to say text decoration to be none. And after that, we're going to say that we would want a color probably to be chocolate, right? Color chocolate. Next thing that we want to do is actually make them rotate as we're hovering over them. So what I'm going to say is that I would want to add a transition property over here. And I'm going to say that this is going to be transform. And transform is going to be 1 second over here. And again, we're going to use ease in and out over here like this. Now after that, we actually want to do the hovering property over here. So I'm going to say ULLI over here, a hover. So as I'm hovering over the link, I would want to be actually spinning, right? So over here, I'm going to say transform. And I'm going to say that this is going to be rotate. So now pretty much I'm writing what kind of transformation I would want to have. So here I'm just going to 360 degrees. And I'm just going to close it out. And I'm going to say that border also by hovering I would want. So I'm just going to say border is going to be 2 pixels solid black over here. 2 pixels solid black. And after that, what I'm going to say is border radius 5 pixels. So it's going to be border or here radius 5 pixels. So if we go back over here and check it out, you can see what's happening, right? So now we have the spinning property, and also as we're going up and down, it's actually staying fixed on the top, right? However, let's just add a couple of neat things about the box so it looks a little bit more realistic. So what I'm going to say over here, I'm just going to say that I want to select this div, this box div that we created, and I would want to say that it should have a width of 100% over here like this. Then it should have a text align, let's say center. And after that, we're going to say that background color, we're going to change a background color, and we're going to say that this is going to be this almond one over here like this. And after that, we're going to say that we would want a margin on the top to be actually 60 pixels. And the reason why it's 60 pixels, because that's the height of our navbar, right? So now I can see how nicely I pushed them up, push the navbar up or push the div down, and you can say whatever you want. I mean, margin top is 60 pixels, and that therefore now we have a nice space over here, right? So therefore we can work it really nicely with this navbar. And this is how we can actually create a very easy fixed top navbar. So how do we create a fixed sidebar? In this case, it's going to be on the left-hand side. Now, again, you can see that we're sitting in HTML file over here, and we can see that we haven't done any particularly special tags. The only thing we're going to add maybe a title. We're going to say a fixed sidebar, something like this, sidebar. And over here, we're going to start obviously adding our HTML skeleton, right? And as always, we're going to start with a nav tags over here like this. I'm going to say that we're going to be placing our unordered list within a nav tag. And over here, we're going to create a unordered list. and here it's going to be a list item with a link over here, and it's going to be a href attribute that has a hashtag as a value, and over here we're just going to say that this is going to be home. Then I'm going to select the whole line, and I'm just going to copy this like 4 times again, and here I'm going to say about, and this is going to be info, and this is going to be, I don't know, survey, something like this. So now we have 4 list items. Now let's keep going, and let's add actually again a div, and we're gonna again call it a div and give it a class of box. And over here we're just gonna say that within this div, again, there's gonna be a heading 1, and it's gonna say hello world, right? And again, we're just gonna select the whole line, and we're just gonna copy it multiple times, so then when we're scrolling up and down a page, we actually can see how this navbar over here is fixed to the side. Now I just need to grab this div over here, this closing tag, and actually press cut and paste it all the way in the bottom. So now all my h1s are sitting actually within this div, and I'm actually ready to go ahead and actually start styling over here. So I created over here these style tags, and I'm obviously going to start setting the rules. And the first rule that I would want is to select all the elements and say that I would want them to have margin 0 and padding 0, right? This would be the first thing. Now after that, I'm going to start styling a unordered list, and what I would want to do is actually set first a width and a height and all that. So I'm just going to say over here a unordered list, and you can see that I made a wrong brackets over here, so I'm just going to create a curly brackets, and I'm going to say list style type over here, list style type, and this is going to be none. And after that, what we're going to say is that we would want to have a set width to be 30%, and then we would want a position to be fixed over here like this, and after that we would want a height to be 100%. And over here now you can see that what's happening, right? It's sitting all the way on the left hand side on the top, and as we're scrolling up and down, it is fixed, right? However, we would need to set a rules for this box over here, right? For this div that has actually all the h1 headings. So over here I'm going to write a rule, and I'm going to say that I would want this box to be floated right over here like this, and I would want this to be a width of, let's say, I don't know, like 70%, since I'm setting that one to 30%. And after that, I would want my height to be, let's say, to 1600 pixels, something like this. Because you can see over here, if I set the height to be 100%, I would need to set the height over here for this div, right? So now you can see that we're slowly but surely we're actually getting there. And the last thing that I would want to do is actually margin left. I'd want to be like something like 30%, right? Because if we're setting this one to the left hand side to be set 30%, we would obviously want this margin to be 30%. And after that, what we're going to say is we would want a text align center, and we're just going to give it some background color, right? Again, so we're going to say background color over here like this, and we're going to say that this is going to be like this almond one, right? So now you can see that we have set up the div, but we just need to make this unordered list a little bit nicer, right? So let's go back and maybe add a couple of more properties over here to this unordered list. So first we're just going to say that this is going to have a line height of, like, let's say 60 pixels. So line height 60 pixels. Then we're just going to say that it's going to have a background color over here of dark gray. And now you can see how it's spanning all the way to the bottom, right? So that's the point of this, adding this height over here of 100%. Because if we have the set height over here of 1600 pixels, then it's obviously this color is going to be spanning all the way to the bottom. Now, actually, we can go ahead and style the list items. And we're going to say that over here, list items over here like this. And we're just going to say that we would want them to have a display block over here like this. And we're going to say that we would want a width to be 100%. And when we say 100%, we actually mean this 100% within this 30% over here. So we would want our list items to be spanning all the way across. Now, after that, let's go ahead and actually style a links over here. So I'm just going to say links. And I'm going to say that I would want them to be display block again, because I want to click them anywhere, not just on the text. And then I would want to say text align center. So I move them nicely to the center. And after that, I would just say the text decoration would be none. None over here. And after that, we're going to say we're going to add it a color, right? I'm going to say color, and color is going to be chocolate. Now, what also we would want to do is actually have this transformation property, right? That actually our links are moving, let's say from left to right, right? So here we're just going to write a transition over here like this, and we're going to say that this is going to be transform over here like this, and we're just going to say that this is going to be 1 second ease in out, right? Something like this. So now let's go ahead and let's actually set the property when we're actually hovering over, right? So we say a pseudo class over here of hover, and we just set a couple of rules, right? So the first one is going to be transform. So this is, we're actually saying what type of transformation should be. And instead of spinning 360 degrees, we're just going to say that we would want to translate 30%, right? 30 over here like this, 30%. And we would set 0 over here. So then what happens is you can see that as I'm hovering over, you can see how they're spinning from left to right. But just to make it a little bit more interesting, what we can do is actually set a border, 2 pixels solid black over here like this. And now we also can have a border radius over here like this, radius, and to be like, I don't know, 5 pixels. So what happens is as I'm hovering over, you can see that I have this nice border, and they're going from left to right. And also the whole point of this video was to show you that this navbar is staying fixed as I'm going scrolling up and down the page. So now you can see how easy it is actually to make all this. So how do we create a drop-down menu within a navbar? So as always, we're going to start within our HTML skeleton. So over here, I'm just going to create a nav tags over here like this. And within the nav tags, we're obviously going to place a unordered list. And over here within unordered list, we're going to say list items. And we would want a link over here also to have a href attribute, to have a hashtag. And after that, we're going to create a, let's say, a name home, right? And what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this like, I don't know, 4 times again. And we're going to say about. And over here, we're going to say a survey. And over here, we're going to write a, I don't know, something like drop down, right? This is going to be our drop down menu. Now, what we need to do is if we want to create a drop down within this, let's say, drop down list, we need to go within this list item over here, the one that we want to create a drop down menu. And over here, we need to create another unordered list within a list items, right? So here it's going to be list item. Here we're going to create another link over here. We're going to say href over here like this, and it's going to have a hashtag as a value of href. And over here again, we're going to write a, let's say in this case, I'm just going to say this is going to be link 1, and I'm just going to copy this like, I don't know, 4 times, right? So now you can see what's happening. So now let's go ahead and actually style this navbar and this drop down menu. So over here, I'm going to create a style tags. And within the style tags, the first thing that I would want to do is actually target all the elements over here. And I want to say that I would want them to have a margin 0 and a padding 0. So it's much more easier for us to work with, right? And after that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select all the unordered lists. And I would want to say that I would want them to list style type to be none, right? So this is going to be pretty easy. I'm just selecting all the unordered lists. Now we need to keep in mind that we have two types of unordered lists over here, right? We have the ones that are direct children of the navigation over here, and we have the descendants, and there's a huge difference between two of them, right? So first, let's select the list items over here, so they would be displayed in line, right? And the way I would write over here, I would say that nav ul li over here, and I would want them to be display and display inline block. So this is going to be our inline block. Now you can see how all my list items are actually displayed in line, right? The problem is with this last one that you can see that it's pushing all the way up, right? So the way I would target that one, I would actually say nav, and then I would want to select ul, li, and over here ul, and I would want to say that I would want a position, absolute, and then I would say the coordinates pretty much, and I would say that this would be 100% over here, and left it would be 0. Now there's a couple of things happening. First of all, you can see that it moved away all the way to the bottom, right? And the reason for that is that we selected position absolute, right? So over here, if we would write for list item to be position relative, you can see how it moved all the way to the top, because right now actually list items, these ones, right, are actually holding this unordered list accountable. Now we also need to remember that we are actually selecting this unordered list, right? I'm not selecting all the lists. I don't want all the lists to be absolute to the top. I just want this one, right? Because what I want to do is actually, as I'm going to be hovering over this list items, I want it to be displayed, this unordered list. So here I'm going to say display, and I'm going to say none, so you can see how it disappeared. However, if I create over here a nav ul li hover, nav ul li, and over here I'm just going to write hover, and I could say that I would want this child over here, this ul over here like this, I would want it to be display, and I'm going to write display block. So now you can see what's going to happen. That's, as I'm hovering, you can see what's happening, right? They're actually displaying right away. Now we haven't done any kind of fancy work. We just pretty much did the backbones for everything. So now obviously we can go ahead and we can just give it a little bit more nicer style, right? So what I'm going to do again, I'm just going to select specific ul. In this case is going to be again the child of a nav. So again, we're just styling this one. We're not going to be styling this one. We're going to be styling the top one, right? So what I would say is that I would want to have a width of, let's say, 100%. Then I would want a height to be like 60 pixels. Then I would want a line height to be 60 pixels. Then I would want a background color to be like, I don't know, dark gray. Then I would probably want a text align center. And that's pretty much, I think, is going to be it for now for whatever we're doing, right? So we're just going to make a little bit more space, and let's add whatever we have to the list items, right? So now we're going to target actual list items. And what we want to do is we want to say that list items should be, let's say width should be like 100 pixels, something like this. And again, I think that's going to be pretty much it for the top list items. So let's move along and actually select a anchors within a list item. So here we're going to write ul li, and over here we're going to say a, and we're going to say that we want them to be display block over here, display block, and we would want them to have text decoration none, and over here we want let's say color, and we would want the color to be chocolate. Right, we're going to say that this is going to be like chocolate, something like this. And now the last thing what we can do is actually we can change it around, and we can select all the anchors. So all the anchors are affected. So this is the case where we would want to select not just the anchors that are actually on the top, but we want to select all the anchors. So you can see what's happening, right? And now let's go ahead and actually work with this list item, right? So the first thing we want to do is actually also add a background color, and we want to add the same background color, dark gray. And let's check it out what we have over here. So you can see The problem is that it's so small, right? And the way we fix that, actually, we say width, and we say the width to be 100%. So we go back, and you can see that now the width is actually exactly 100%, and the 100% of whatever the list item over here we have, right? Now, after that, what we want to do is actually go ahead and actually change some properties as we're hovering over our anchors over here, our links. So the way I would do that, I would write nav ul li a, and here I would say hover. And what I would want to do is just actually pretty much create a little border. So I'm going to say a border to be 2 pixels solid black, something like this. So let's go ahead and check it out. So now you can see what's happening. As I'm hovering over them, you can see that I have these little borders, right? So this is how we can actually create a very simple drop-down menu that has a little hovering effect over them, and pretty much those are the basics. So how do we create a simple sidebar that actually has a drop-down menu? Now again, as always, we'll need to start with our nav tags over here, and obviously over here we're going to place our unordered list, and within the unordered list we're going to place in list items, and we're going to say that again the list item is going to have a href attribute, and this is going to be equal to hashtag, and over here we're just going to say again home, and we're just going to copy this like, I don't know, 4 times, right? Again, this is going to be about, this is going to be a, I don't know, survey, something like this, survey, and this is going to be our drop down, right? So it's going to be drop down over here like this. Now again, within this drop down, we're going to create another unordered list. So over here, I'm just going to say ul, and I'm going to create another unordered list, right? And again, I'm just going to have the same pretty much things. I'm just going to say that this is going to have a href attribute over here like this, and within that href attribute, this is going to be a, let's say, menu, let's say 1, right? So again, we're just going to select the whole line, and we're just going to copy it like, again, 4 times. So again, the main goal right now is we have done with HTML, with setting up our backbone for our navbar. Now we would need to actually place this menu exactly on a side, and that's actually going to be really easy. So now that we're done with creating our HTML backbone, over here we're going to create a style tags over here like this, style, not strong, over here style, like this, and within the style tags we're obviously going to start styling. Now the first thing that I want to show you is why we're doing this list style type none, over here list style type over here, and we always say none, and before that we always write the margin and padding 0, and we obviously therefore we cannot see what we're doing, but you can see these annoying little circles, and if we write list style type none, then we actually get rid of those circles. Now over here what we want to do is obviously, as always, just set all of them all the elements margin padding 0, margin 0, padding 0, something like this, padding 0, and now you can see how they all lined up. And again, as always, we would need to want to start over here with this unordered list, right? Because we want to place it over here somewhere, right? So the way we would do that, we would write nav, we would write ul, li, and then again unordered list, that is the child of the list items. And over here what we would want to say is position, and we would say position absolute, and then we would say top 0, and over here we're going to say that the left is going to be 100%. Now you can see that it pretty much disappears all the way over here, right? And that's not what we want. And the reason why it disappears is, well, there's actually 2 reasons. First, we would need to set the list items to relative, and then we would need to have a width. So over here, if I write nav ul li, and I would say that they would have a width over here, and let's say that we're going to have width of, let's say, 100 pixels over here like this, and then I would want to say that I would want their position to be relative, so you can see what happens, right? Right away my unordered list comes all the way here because now I have set width, and you know what I'm also going to say a background color, I'm just going to add it like a dark gray. So over here, I'm just going to say that this is going to be a dark gray. And now I can see that as I'm over here selecting these list items, you can see that only the first ones are dark gray, right? However, if I would just say that all of them, all the list items that are descendants of unordered list would have the same property, now you can see what happens, right? That all of them actually have the same style. So over here, I can write the pretty basic things. I can say text align, I can move them center. And I think that's going to be pretty much done for list items, right? Now let's create a new rule for the line height, because we obviously would want it to be a little bit bigger. So the way we would do that, again, you can see on our list, right? So what we can do right over here, we can say line height, let's say 60 pixels, right? So it's just a little bit bigger. So it's a little bit more foreseeable, right? Now let's go ahead and actually start styling a anchors or links of our nav, right? So here I can easily write that I would want to select all of them, right? I don't need to write the actual selector because I would want all of my links look the same, right? And I would want to get rid of a text decoration first of all. I would want to say this is going to be none. Then I would want to say that the color should be something different. So I'm going to say a color to be, let's say, chocolate over here like this. Then I'm going to say that, I don't know, what else I would want. Maybe border? No border. Let's just create a hover effect as we're hovering. So I'm going to say nav, ul, li, over here like this. And then we're going to say hover. And then over here, we're going to say that as we're hovering, we want a border 2 pixels solid black, something like this. So now you can see that as I'm hovering over them, they're displaying black. But now you can see that we haven't done the display block property. Therefore, only as we're hovering the links, you can see that only as we're hovering over the text, they're actually hovering, right? So in this case, we would need to write display and display block. So now I can see what happens. Now as I'm hovering over the whole link, it is displaying the whole width, right? Now after that, what we want to do is actually display only this on our list, only as we're hovering over this list item, right? So what we would need to do over here, you see this on our list. Now we're targeting only this on our list. And I would say that display, and I would say display none, over here like this. And then as I'm hovering over it, so I would find a list item again. And I would say that as I'm hovering over them, so over here we're going to create a new rule, and we're going to say that nav, ul, li, and over here we're going to say hover, and we're going to say that on our list, over here on our list, display block, right? So we're going to say display, and we're going to say display block. So let's check it out what we have. And sure enough, as I'm hovering over here over this dropdown, I have my unordered list showing over here. So now you can see how easy it is to actually create this drop-down menu even on the sidebar. So how do we create a navbar with multiple drop-down menus? Well, the first thing we would need to do is obviously create our HTML tags for that, right? So over here I'm going to create again a nav, and within a nav we're going to create a unordered list, and within unordered list we're going to create list items, right? So over here, I'm just going to say that list items should be something like 4 of them. So over here, it's going to have a href attribute, and that href attribute is going to have a value of home over here. This is going to be our link, and this is when we're going to copy this. Let's say info over here, and then it's going to be about, and this is going to be like survey or something, right? So this is going to be our first line, right? And after that, we're going to create a couple of more drop downs. So we're going to create a drop down out of this survey. So the way we would do that, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, and I'm just going to say copy, and we're going to create a little bit more space over here, and we're just going to paste it. And over here, I'm just going to say that this is going to be a menu 1 over here like this. and I'll do that with all of them. I'm going to say that this is going to be menu 1, and over here also it's going to be the same thing, and the last one also is going to be, well, you know what, let's call it this one drop down, right? And what we're going to do after that, we're going to create one more drop down menu over here. So I'm going to paste this, and now you can see over here how we have a drop down menu, right? So what we can do is actually start styling, and obviously we will need to do that in the head element. So I'm going to go to the head element over here like this, and I'm going to say that I would want to create a style tags. And the first thing what I want to do is obviously again create margins and padding 0. But let's just do a little bit different this time. Let's just create a, let's say for all the unordered lists, let's create a background color. Let's say blue, something like this. So now you can see how all of them are blue. Well, maybe blue wasn't the best color. Let's create something like yellow, because you can see that our links by default are always blue, right? So let's create yellow. So now you can see that pretty much everything is yellow because unordered lists are going down the line. Or let's say over here, if we create list items and we say that background color for all the list items should be, let's say, red. So we can see why we're doing the paddings and actually margins of 0, right? So what we would need to do over here is, let's say if we say that ULs, all the list unordered lists should have a list style type none. So then we're going to get rid of the circle, but you can see still over here this yellow, right? And this is our unordered list, and this is because of the paddings and margins. So over here, if I create all the elements and I say that I would want all my elements to have a margin 0 and a padding 0, you can see that now everything is red, which is the color of our list item, right? And let's just start styling one by one everything, and we're pretty much going to be jumping a little bit back and forth. However, we just kind of want to do it I don't know, in order, right? So over here I'm going to say nav, and I'm going to say ul and li, right? Because I only want to style the first my first list items over here, these ones, right? Those are the ones that I want to style. And the first thing I'm going to say is going to display, and I'm going to want them display inline block, right? So again, as always, what happens is that this unordered list over here, these ones, they're pushing this survey all the way to the top, right? However, they are in line, but the rest of them, they're actually styled as block elements, right? That's why they're not in a line. They're actually from top to bottom, right? So the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to say nav ul li ul, and we would want a position to be absolute. Or here we're going to say position absolute, and we're going to say that we would want a top to be 100%, or here like this 100%, and left also to be 0, right? However, we need to remember that these ones need to be right now position relative, because those are the ones that are going to be actually holding them accountable, right? Because before that, before we wrote over here relative, they were actually, this unordered list was somewhere here in the bottom, right? Let me just show you, right? It was somewhere, you can see over here. But once I set this position to relative, over here like this, you can see how it is all the way to the top, right? So the next thing that we want to do is actually deal with this drop down menu, right? So what we would want to do again is actually create a nav, and then we say ul, and then we say li, and then we say again ul, and then again li, and then ul, right? So this is how we actually get to the sub menu that we want, right? And again, we say that we want to be position absolute over here, position absolute, right? And then we want to say that we would want it to be a, let's say, left to be this case 100% over here, and we would want to be top to be 100%, to be 0, sorry, right? So now that you can see that they're pushed all the way to the top, and the reason for that is again, we set this to absolute. However, these ones are relative, right? So we would need to add these list items, right? The second one, these ones over here, we would want to set them as a relative, so it would be sitting right next to it, right? So again, we just create over here a new rule, and we're going to say the nav ul li ul li over here, that we would want them to be position, and we would want them position to be relative, right? So now you can see what happens is that how we actually got them to be lining up, right? And obviously what we can do right now is we can say that, let's start with the last one, that we would want them to be display and display none over here like this. And we're going to create a new rule right on top, where we're just going to say the nav ul li ul li over here hover. We're going to say that uls are going to be display block. So let's check it out what we have. As we're hovering over this one, you can see that this one is showing up, right? And again, we can do the same thing over here with this one. You can see that we have a display, and we have display none over here like this. So now this one disappears. However, what we can do is we can set the new rule over here, and we can say nav ul li hover ul over here, and then we say that this one should be display block. So we go back over here, and we say display block. So you can see what happens as I'm hovering, all of them, now they're actually appearing. And now you can see that it was very primitive the way it looks. However, we can obviously make it a much more nicer style, right? So we would probably first start with the actual nav ul, right? So I'm going to go somewhere over here, and I'm going to say that nav ul, I would want to be a, I don't know, height to be, let's say 60 pixels as always. I'm going to say that the line height also should be like something like 60 pixels, right? Then what else we can do? I don't know, text align, maybe center, something like this. Then after that, what we would want to do, maybe a little bit better background color. So we're going to say a background color. We're going to say something like dark gray, something like this. Then after that, what we want to do is actually work with these list items, and we would probably want them to have a different background color. Let's say we're going to say a background color to be something like, I don't know, let's try beige, and let's add a border radius, and we're going to say that we want border radius to be like 5 pixels, right? So it's pretty dumb, but it's gonna get our job done. So over here I'm going to say padding, and I'm going to say padding 0.20, so they're a little bit bigger. And I think now we can actually go and start working with over here with this with our anchor tags or links in our actually document. So over here I'm just going to say list items, and what I'm going to say that I would want a text decoration to be none. I would want them to be display block because I want to click them everywhere, not just when I'm clicking on a link. And I would want a color to be like, let's say something like chocolate, right? So now that we're done actually with our links, and you can see over here, it's hard to see because I have still this background color. Let's actually go ahead and start working with next setup on our list over here, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually I'm going to say that I would want a, let's say, background color over here, but I'm just going to say that the background color, I'm just going to care about this list items over here. So I'm going to say again that this is going to be beige. So I'm going to say background color, and this is going to be beige over here like this. So let's check it out what we have. You can see that they turned beige. Now this on our list, I would want a width to be 100%, so it's exactly the width of the list item over here. So you can see this would happen, right? Now what we can also do is as we're hovering over our list items, we would want to have some type of border. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to create a new item over here. I'm going to say nav ul li And over here, I'm just going to say hover. And we would write over here that we want a color to be a little bit different. So let's say I'm just going to say the color is going to be, as I'm hovering, is going to be black. All right, so let's check it out. You can see how it's turning black, and the same thing happens as I'm going over the menu. And the last thing we would need to do is actually get a background color for our list items. So I would write nav ul li over here, and then again ul, and then again we're going to write ul and li, and over here we're going to say that background color we would want a beige. So let's go and check it out what we have. You can see that I have a beige over here. So now you can see how easy it was to actually create a multiple drop down menus within our navbar. And if you want to just add it somewhere else, let's say that right now you have this unordered list, right? And you can just copy this, and let's say that you want to add it over here. Where's the info? So we go over here and just paste it over here like this, and let's check it out, right? And now our info has the menu, right? Because we already set the rules for multiple dimensions, right? So this is how easy it was. So how do we create a transparent navbar in the middle of a banner, or we could also create it in the middle of the page, right? So the first thing obviously what we need is our HTML, and over here what we would first create is actually a div, and I'm going to give this div a class of banner over here like this, and within this div we're actually going to place our nav. So I'm going to write nav just like this, and within the nav we're going to write a unordered list and some list items, right? So here we're just going to say list items, and of course there's going to be a link in there which is going to have a href attribute, and over here again we're just going to write home, and over here I'm just going to select the line and copy this, like, I don't know, like 4 times as always. So here it's going to be info, and here we're going to have a survey, and here we're going to have a, I don't know, contact, right? So this is going to be our banner over here, and this is going to be our unordered list, which is going to be our navbar. So here I'm just going to say transparent over here. This is going to be our navbar. So I'm just going to say navbar, and here we're going to create some style tags. We're not going to create an external style sheet. We're going to create an internal. So we're going to say style, and over here we're just going to start styling all our elements. However, in this case, I'm not going to start with the banner or with the nav, because I just want to style the first unordered list, just so you can see how we're actually placing this nav within this banner in the middle exactly. So the first thing what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to start styling with a unordered list. Now what we always can do is actually select all the elements in our file, and I'm just going to say that I would want a margin 0 over here, and I would want a padding 0, just so I don't need to deal with default paddings and margins over here. So I'm just going to say 0, and obviously with all the unordered lists I would want a list style none, right? But since I'm going to be styling right away the unordered list, I'm just going to say right away that I would want that list to have a width of 100%. Then I would want a list style type none over here like this, and then I would want a height to be, let's say, 40 pixels over here like this, and I'm going to say that the line height is also going to be 40 pixels, so something like this. And after that I'm going to say that this is going to have a border radius over here like this, and this is going to be like 5 pixels, something like that. Now what I also want to do is actually add a overflow hidden property, because we're going to be actually floating our list items. We're not going to be setting them inline block, we're actually going to be floating. So over here I'm just going to say overflow, and I'm just going to say that this is going to be a hidden, right? And the reason for that is if we're floating a child element, so over here in this case list item, right? So you can see that this is going to be direct child of a unordered list. Now, if we're floating a child element, the parent element needs to set to be overflow hidden. That's the rule. So therefore, that's why we were actually using this overflow hidden. So here, what we're going to do is we will write float, and we'll write left. So now you can see how they're all floated. And the nice part about it is what we can do is we can actually set the width right now. We can set it to 20%, right? I mean, we can set to any kind of percent, however we want. But the point is that we can actually set it to percentages, right? We don't need to deal actually with the fact that let's say that we need to give a specific value, right? Now you can see that I messed up a little bit because it should be 25 over here. Now I can see how they're evenly distributed. Now the problem obviously is the fact that my text is not in the center. That's why you see them to the left. We'll fix that once we start actually working with the links. But the point is what we can do, we don't need to set certain pixels. We can actually set it to width. So now I can see it doesn't matter how I'm moving my my screen, right? It's getting bigger or smaller. It's still going to take up exactly 25% of my body over here like this. So the next thing what we would want to do is actually start styling a list item, right? So we're going to say ul, li, and a. So this is going to be our link over here. And we're going to say that we would want our links to be display block, because we obviously want to click them not just when we are actually on a text, but anywhere on the link. So then we're going to say that we would want to get rid of the text decoration of that annoying underline. And then we were going to say the text align is going to be center. So now I can see how they're exactly right now in the middle. And I'm sorry, in the center. And then I'm going to say that the background color is going to be something like Greensboro, right? So I'm going to say Greensboro. So now I can see how I got the color. And then I'm right away going to set the opacity to like 0.5. Right, so you can see how they're actually, much more transparent. And the next thing, what I'm going to add is this is going to be the last thing. I'm just going to change the color. And again, I'm just going to say that this is going to be chocolate. So now I'm done with my unordered list. And the only thing that I'm going to do is actually have a hovering rule over here. So I'm going to say UL-EI over here like this. And then I'm going to say hover. So as I'm hovering over our links, I would want to have a border to be 2 pixel solid black. So I'm going to say border. And here it's going to be 2 pixel solid black. Over here like this. And then after that, we're going to say border radius. Again, we're going to set it to like 5 pixels. So border radius, 5 pixels. And now we're pretty much done with our on our lists and list items and also a links. And what we want to do right now, we actually want to start styling the actual nav over here like this one. And we want to style the banner. And first I'm going to style the banner, and then I'll show you how we can deal with the nav. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I would want a class banner. This is going to be our class. And now let's decide the first thing what we want is actually width over here. And width is going to be 100% of our banner. And then the next thing what we would want, I would want a height. And I would say that the height would be like 440 pixels. Now you can set it bigger or smaller, or you can set it, you can actually use this image that we're going to be working with for the whole background of the page. But in this case, I'm just writing 440, just because I want to. And the next thing what we would want to do is actually add a background image, right? So background image, here I say URL, and here I have a coffee mug, right? So I'm just going to save this. Now I can see that I have my image. So this is going to be my image over here. And the next thing what I would want to do is actually create a no repeat, right? Because you can see that it's repeating many times. And that's not what I want. I actually just want one image that would be covering everything, right? So what we would need to do is background repeat somewhere found. Okay, background. And we're going to say repeat. And we're going to say no repeat. Now after that, we're going to say background size. Ground size over here. And we're going to say that the size is going to be cover. So you can see that right now is basically our image is covering our whole banner, right? And this is what we wanted. And now, as you can see over here, that this is transparent, and only thing we'll have to do is actually place this transparent bar all the way in the middle. Now, before we do that, I would just want to set a position over here to relative, because I'm just going to be using a absolute positioning for my nav to actually place it right in the center, right? So I think that we're pretty much done with the banner. So let's jump to our nav, right? Let's style the nav. I'm going to write a nav selector over here. And first thing what I would want is width, but instead of, let's say 100%, I'm actually going to write 80 over here like this. So now you can see what happens. The nice thing what happens is that if I'm using the percentage, see, I don't need to worry about the fact that how wide the screen is. It's always going to be 80%. And over here, remember when we set 25%, it's still going to be 25% for each of these list items. However, it's going to be from the 80%, right? So over here, if I would change it to 60, right, it would still work the same way. So you get an idea how I can actually work with these percentages much more better in this case than if I would have pixels, right? And after that, what we would want to do is actually place it right in the center, right? And obviously we know that we could set the margin to 0 and just place it horizontally like this, but we want to place it both vertically and horizontally. So I'm just going to use a position absolute. And the way we do that is we write a position over here and we say absolute. And since this one is relative, the banner, now all our navbar is just going to be floating around this banner. So whenever we're going to be setting our dimensions, it's going to be within this banner. It's not going to leave this page. So here I'm just going to say top, and I'm going to say the top is going to be 50%. I'd want 50% from the top, and I would want 50% from the left. So I write left 50%, right? The problem is that it also has its own width, right? So you can see what's happening, that it actually moved too far to the left and actually moved too far down, right? So what we need to do is we need to use this transform property, and we're going to say transform, and I'm going to say translate. And now what I would need to write is negative 50%, or here like this, and also over here negative 50%. So basically what I'm saying is ignore your own height and width, 50% of that, and actually move those 50% to the direction horizontally and vertically, right? And now you can see how easy it was. So now we have a transparent navbar that actually is working over here with a border as we're hovering. It is right exactly in the middle of the page, vertically and also horizontally. Now you can see the only problem over here, you can see this border, right? It's kind of a little bit messing it up, and that it's not in the bottom. So what we can do over here, you can see the line height, and instead of height, I could just write 38, right? Something like this. So now what happens is that as I'm working actually with my border, it's much more noticeable. If I would go 36, it would completely work, right? So now I can see my full border. And this is the only thing that I needed to do, is actually change a little bit of line height, and so the height would be bigger. So now I can see how easy it actually was to create this navbar, transparent navbar, and put it right in the middle of the page. And again, instead of being a banner of 440 pixels, we could have placed it as the background image for a whole page. So how do we create a transparent navbar with multiple drop-down menus? Well, of course, like always, the first thing we would need to do is actually create a HTML basic backbone for that. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to again create a div, and it's going to have a class of banner over here like this. And within that banner, we're actually going to place a nav tags over here like this. And within the nav tags, we're obviously going to place a unordered list over here like this. And within unordered list, we're going to create some list items, right? And list items are going to contain a link over here like this. So there we go. Now we have our first list item, and it's going to be home. And next thing what I'm going to do is actually select the line, and I'm going to copy it like, I don't know, like 4 times. And here I'm going to say about, and this is going to be service or services, and this is going to be contact, right? Something like this. Now you can see that I have my first unordered list with few list items. Now what we can do over here is I actually want to create more drop down menus, of course. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to copy this. So I'm just going to say copy, and over here you can see I have my last list item contact. I obviously can just paste it over here, and here I'm just going to write this is going to be menu, and this is going to be also menu, and this also is going to be menu. Basically all of them are going to be menus. So maybe let's just work with multiple lines at the same time. So it's going to be menu. Here I'm just going to delete this. Now that we have done with that, let's actually create one more sub menu. So we go over here, and maybe let's just call this differently. Let's just call this drop down, and maybe this one too, so we have a little bit more idea. Drop down, and within the drop down we're going to paste some more. So this one I'm going to call sub menu, right? And over here again we're just going to delete a few of them, and I'm going to write sub menu, and over here we're just going to get rid of this stuff. So now we have pretty much created a drop down menus that we're going to have. Now I'm going to do all the styling, and then I'm going to show you how easy it is actually to add one more, because if you remember from example, we actually had, I think somewhere over here was another menu, and we're going to do that. But first I just want to style it and show you how easy it is after that to add sub menus. So let's go ahead and actually create a style tags, because we're not going to be creating external style sheet. We're going to do it within internal style sheet. So here within the style, and let's start styling. Now I'm pretty much always debating, should I do the banner first or should I do the unordered list, because it kind of, if we're first styling over here this unordered list, then maybe it's hard to see what we're doing in the banner, and maybe it's the other way around. So I'm just going to go pretty much down the line and just start with the banner, and then you'll see how everything falls into place. So the first thing that I always want to do is actually create this universal selector, and I just want to say margin 0, and over here I'm also going to say padding 0, right? So I say padding over here, and that also is going to be 0. Now that we're pretty much done with that, over here the next thing what we want is actually start styling the banner, right? So over here we write banner, and again we're just going to write that this is going to have width 100%, and this is going to have a height for 40 pixels, and this is going to have a background image over here. So it's going to be background image, and we're going to say this is going to have URL, and this is, in this case it's going to be coffee over here like this. So now we have a background image, but what we want to do is actually save it and see what happens, right? So if I refresh, you can see that it's the unfortunate thing that it's repeating, right? But we already know how to tackle that, so we're just going to say background repeat, and we're going to say no repeat, and now you can see that we have only one image. And obviously the next thing what we want is background size, and we want to write that the size should be cover over here. So now we're pretty much covering the whole banner that we have. And after that, what we want to do is actually set position relative, because we will be using position absolute for the nav to actually place it within our banner. So I'm going to say position relative over here like this. Now that we're done with the banner, let's actually start styling the nav. So we're just going to create a little bit more space, and I'm going to write nav. And what I would want to do is actually style the nav UL instead of nav. So I'm going to say nav UL. But you know what? Let's, before we start doing it, just want to do something that I would want all my unordered lists to have, is this list style type to be 0. So I'm going to write list style type over here, and I would say none, right? Because I don't want those little circles, right? And this is always something that you want to do. Maybe if you know already some kind of element that's going to be repeating, right, you probably want to style it right away for all of them, because in this case, obviously you can see that right away I'm selecting just the unordered list that I'm going to be placing here in the middle, right? I'm not selecting all the unordered lists. I'm only selecting the ones that are actually children of the nav, not descendants, but actually children. So over here, what I would want to do is actually say that I would want a height to be 50 pixels. Then I would want a line height to be the same. So I'm going to say 50 pixels over here like this. Then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to say that we would want a margin to the left to be 20 pixels over here like this. So we just moved it a little bit. And after that, we're going to say that this is going to have a position over here, and it's going to be absolute, and it's going to be 10% from the top, right? So I'm going to say 10% top, something like this. Now it doesn't make any sense right now because we haven't styled the list items, but just bear with me, and in a second we're actually going to do that. So over here, if I would write a nav, and then I would say ul li, and over here I would say display inline block. So we have display and we have inline block. So now I can see how my actually nav moved over here. Now I can see the problem because my unordered list is obviously pushing everything up. You see this drop down, right? But we'll fix that once we actually start styling these unordered list itself, right? So don't worry about it. The most important thing you can see over here, these list items, they are the ones that are actually sitting where we want them to sit. So after that, what we would want to do is actually do the width of the list items, and I'm just going to say a width should be something like 150 pixels, right? So maybe that's a little bit too much, like 100 pixels. So let's check it out, what we have on a bigger screen. Is it better? I mean, it's a little bit better. Yeah, 100 pixels is going to be fine. So now we're done with that. Let's actually style all the links in our page. Right? And I want to style them separately. I just want to style them all together. So the way I'm going to write is nav and ul, and over here I'm just going to say li and a over here like this, and here I'm going to say that I would want them display block over here like this. I'm going to be having text align center, and after that I'm going to say that I don't want the text decoration, so I'm going to say none over here like this. And after that, we're going to have a border over here, and it's going to be 2 pixel solid. I don't know, just solid. Solid is going to be fine. Let's just keep it solid. And then we're going to create a border radius over here, and we're going to say that that's going to be like 5 pixels, right? So you can see these nice little rounded corners. And then I would want to say a background color to be like dark gray. Not dark blue, dark gray over here, gray. So this is going to be our color. And then after that, we would want to have a opacity already right away. So transparency. So I'm just going to say 0.7. And after that, I'm going to say that it would have a color. That's going to be the color of the font. And this is going to be chocolate. And after that, we're going to say a margin to the top. Over here, we're just going to create a little margin, and it's going to be 5 pixels, right? So this is going to be our plan, right? But again, we haven't styled yet these unordered lists. And actually, before we style these unordered lists, what I would want to do is actually set all the nav ul li's relative, because we're going to be using the position absolute to style the nav uls, right? So over here it's going to be position, and I'm going to say relative. So this is going to be my position relative. And after that, we're going to start actually styling a unordered list. So we would write nav ul. So now I start styling pretty much the second unordered list. And I would say display, and I would want them to be display block. And after that, I would want to say that width should be 100 over here like this. And after that, I'm going to say that it's going to have a position absolute. So I'm going to say position. And over here, I'm going to say absolute. So now you can see how they right away moved to the top, right? Because I actually changed the way they're actually displayed. And then I'm going to say top. It's going to be 100% over here like this. And then I'm going to say that the left is going to be 0. And the last one, I would want to have a visibility, and it's going to be hidden. Now, the reason why we set these ones to relative, right? See what happens over here if I do this. So let's say that I would just get rid of this, right? So you see what's happens, right? It's not really understanding where it needs to end, right? It's pretty much using right now all those links as some type of relative, but that's not what we want. We actually want the list item. So therefore we write over here, and now it knows that it needs to stay relative to the list items, all right, not to the actual. Remember when we set this one to relative, actual banner, that's where it would be staying for, but we want the list items. Therefore we write here relative, and over here is going to be absolute, and here we're just going to write that visibility is going to be hidden for now, because we don't want to, we only want to see that as we're actually hovering. So in order to actually appear that when we're hovering, we're going to say nav ul, and here we're going to say li. This is going to be hover, and as we're hovering we want a ul over here to be shown. So what we do over here, we write a visibility visible, right? We write visible. So now let's check it out. As I'm hovering, sure enough, you can see that they're showing over here, right? But you can see that I set it only for these list items, right? So therefore, as I'm hovering over this one, it's not showing it. But we'll fix that. Don't worry about it. That's pretty much probably is going to be our next stop, right? So again, what we would need to do is we write nav, then we write ul, then we write ul over here like this. And then again, we say that we would want a position over here, and we would want a absolute. And after that, the difference is going to be here, we're going to say top, we would want 0, and actually left to be 100%. And you'll see in a second why it is like that. So now what we're going to do is actually we're going to say a visibility is going to be hidden over here also. However, again, what we're going to do is we're actually going to set it that as we're hovering over them, the list items, they're going to be actually visible. So over here we'll write nav ul and ul over here like this, and then we say li, and then we say hover, and then we say as we're hovering over these ones, we would want a ul to be shown, right? So we say visibility visible. Pretty easy. So now let's check it out. Let's just make it, let's save for sure, not that one. Let's save this one, make the screen a little bit bigger, and sure enough, you can see over here, this is my second drop down menu. And again, the difference you see over here we have top 100, left 0, right? Here we had a top 0 because we want actually to be even, and you can see that it's not a little bit even because of the margins. So obviously if we go a little bit, let's say minus 5%, something like this over here, let's try that one out, right? So you can see that it's already moving up, right? So over here, if we would maybe do it more, let's say like 10, let's check it out. What do we have? That should be pretty, yeah, you see it's pretty close, right? But the point of that is why it is happening like that is because obviously because of the margins. But you see the idea that over here, how we can create these submenus. Now I didn't add the hover, so probably what I would need to do is actually go over here. You see this nav, the links, but we would want a nav ul li a, and then a pseudo class of hovering that as we're hovering over. And let's say I'm going to say that this is going to be color black. I would want, and I don't know what else. I guess that's going to be it. So I'm just going to save this and refresh it. And you can see what happening is that as I'm hovering over them, actually they're turning black, right? Everything, the border and actually the color of the fonts. Now let's check it out how we can do it to actually add one more over here, right? This list item. So we go over here, we find where is our actually unordered list. And I don't know, we can maybe just take the whole thing, right? So what we can do is over here, we can just take this and we're just going to copy this. Let's add it over here where's the home, right? So we create a little bit more room just so we can actually understand better what we're doing. I'm just going to paste this. And again, I'm just going to save this over here just in case. And I'm going to refresh. You can see that now my home has the same submenu, right? And the menus. So you can see actually how easy it is to do that, right? And how simple it really is. There's a couple of basic things that we need to follow, and we can actually make this in no time. So how do we create a responsive navbar? Well, we would obviously need to first add the HTML to our page, right? And you can see over here that we have a basic index.html file that has some basic tags over here, the HTML tags. And the only interesting thing over here so far is the actual link to a font awesome folder, right? To get our icons. And over here within our folder, we have two images. One is going to be the background for our header, and the other one is going to be our logo. And you can see that it's pretty much a transparent image. And again, if we go back to index.html, what we would need to do right now is actually add a HTML tags to create our to structure for our responsive navbar. So first I'm going to write that this is going to be a nav element, and within a nav element we're going to place a div that's going to have a class of button over here like this, and it's also going to serve as our image and as a button. All right, so over here I'm just going to create a link, and I'm just going to say that this is going to have a href that's going to go nowhere over here like this with a hashtag. And over here, I'm just going to leave it empty right now, but later on we're going to be adding image, and we're going to be styling it as a button with CSS. Now that we're done with that, let's actually go ahead and create over here an unordered list. And within an unordered list, we're going to create a list items over here like this. And within the list item, we're going to create again a link. And the link is going to be obviously again href over here like this. And here we're going to write that first icon that we would want to add, and I'm just going to say it's going to be span, and it's going to have a class. And over here we're going to write fa and fa home, right? So this is going to be our first icon. And here I'm just going to write home. So now you can see that I've created our first a list item that actually has already icon, and it works as our first, let's say, navbar menu, right? So here, if I just create a little bit more space, just so it looks a little better, right? So what I would do right now, I'm just going to copy this line over here, and I'm just going to paste it a couple of times, right? So let's say like 4. And here what I'm going to do, I'm going to say that this is going to be a info, and this is going to be a about, over here like this, and here is going to be survey. So this is going to be our navbar. Now what I'm going to do over here, I'm also going to change these icons. So if I have a info, I'm going to say that this is going to be info icon, and you can see how it changed over here. And here we're going to write a coffee, because this is going to be pretty much a navbar about coffee. And last one, because everybody hates taking surveys, we're going to say that this is going to be FA, and it's going to be bomb, right? Something like this. So now that we're done with our navbar, let's actually go ahead and create our header, our skeleton pretty much for a header. And what I would write over here, I would create a header element over here like this. And within a header element, we're going to place a section, just in case maybe we want to add some more stuff later on. We're not going to add anything more than what we're doing in this video. However, maybe later on you want to add something else. So therefore, I'm going to be placing it within a section. And here I'm just going to say that I would want a heading 1, and the heading 1 is going to say coffee over here like this. And next we're going to add a paragraph, just a simple paragraph over here like this. And we're going to say that coffee is the best thing ever, right? Best thing ever. And after that, we're going to create a little button, which is going to be as a link. So I'm going to write here an href, and this is again have a hashtag. And over here, we're going to say that we're going to add a class, and we're just going to say that this class is also going to be button, but it's going to be shorter. It's going to be btn over here. And next, we're going to write what we would want to say in our link. So I'm just going to say click if you agree over here like this. And I would have a closed section, and I would have a closed header. So now you can see that we pretty much made our basic HTML for our responsive navbar. And now we would need to add the CSS to actually style everything. Let's go ahead to our head element over here. I'm going to create a style tags because I don't want to create an external style sheet because I think it's going to be more visible if we do it within the style tags. And the first thing that I would want to do is actually set the margin and padding for all the elements to 0. So I'm going to create this universal selector over here, and I'm going to say that I would want a margin to be 0 and a padding to be 0. So you can see how everything pretty much moved right away all the way to the left top left corner. And over here also I would want a box sizing, and I'm going to want to say that this is going to be a border box. Now that we're done with that, let's actually style the whole body that we're going to be working with. So what I'm going to say is I would want a font family to be a monospace, and after that we would want a font size to be 100% because we'll be using a EM values when we're working with our responsive menu. So I'm going to say a font size over here like this, and I'm going to say that this is going to be 100%. And the reason why I'm going to be using the EM values later on is because as you're working with a responsive, let's say in this case Navbar, or in general, if you're working with a responsive website, you would want to have your fonts to be actually changing as you're changing your screen, right? You wouldn't want them to stay all the time, let's say with a set size of 20 pixels or something like that. It wouldn't look really good. So therefore, we're going to be using the EM values. And here I'm going to say that this is going to be a line height, and the line height is going to be 1.5 over here. And again, we're going to be using the EM values like this. And the next thing we're going to say that background color for our whole body would be something like wheat, something pretty basic. Now, next thing what we would want to do is actually say that we would want to style a nav UL, which is unword list over here. And I'm just going to say that I would want a list style type none, right? So we go with list style type, and we would say none over here like this. And now we can actually start styling our list items over here. Now the key over here is that you can see that I'm actually working over here within the style, right? But I'm going to be styling as actually my screen is, let's say, this size, right? So I'm not going to be actually styling the whole page first over here to the big screen and then actually changing my style with media queries to the smaller screen. What I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to work with a smaller screen first, and only then I'm going to add a media query once the actually screen gets bigger. And you'll see why it is actually easier to do it that way. So over here, I'm going to say that nav ul li, which is going to be our list items within the nav, and also our div over here, this div button, I would want to add a style to them. So I'm going to write over here a div, and it's going to have a class of button. And what I would want to say is I would want them to be display block over here like this, and I would want them to have a width of 100% like this. And after that, I'm going to say that they were going to have a background color, and the background color is going to be pretty much all the 5s. So I'm going to say that it's going to be 555, 555, right? So this is going to be my color. Now after that, what I'm going to do is actually add a text align center over here like this. And after that, what we're going to say that is going to be a line height, and line height is also going to be 4 EM, right? And over here, the font size, we're going to say that it's going to be 1.2 EM. So I'm going to write font size over here like this, and it's going to be 1.2 EM, right? So you can see what we did over here. Pretty much made our list items bigger. Now, let's move on, and let's actually style this button over here. Let's give it like a little bit different style. So I'm going to say div button, right? And what I'm going to say is that I would want to have a height for that to be like 4 EM, again like this. So you can see that I created it over here. However, it obviously doesn't have a background color, so we cannot see it. And I'm going to say that it's going to have a background color, and it's going to be red. And you can see how it appears right away. And after that, I'm going to say that I would want a border on the bottom. So I'm going to say border bottom, and it's going to be 0.5 EM solid black. Solid black. So now that we're done with our actually div button over here, what I would want to do right now, since we actually have created a height for the button right over here with the side, I would want to add a image over here, and this is going to be as our logo. So I'm going to say over here that I would want a image, and the source would be a Costa PNG over here. And what I would also want to write over here is that I'd want a height right away to be 100%, right? So we're going to go over here and we're going to write that height is going to be 100%. 100% over here like this. And we're just going to close it out. And you can see that right away our image is exactly lining up, because over here you can see that we created this div button and we gave it a height and we placed this logo right exactly in the middle. And the reason for that is when we're adding the height 100%, it fits exactly to our parent element, right? So after that, what I would want to do is actually keep on styling, and I would want to actually style these links over here. So again, we're just going to continue working over here, and I would want to say that nav ul-lia over here like this. So we're selecting the links, and I would want to say that I would want them to have a text decoration none, text decoration none over here like this. And after that, we're going to say that I would want them to have a color red. So now they're red. And after that, I would want them to be displayed block, because I would want them to be actually clickable all throughout, right? Not just when I'm hovering over the letters over here, but if you add display block, it's obviously it's clickable even if we're left or right side over here like this. And after that, we're just gonna add a hovering class that as we're hovering. So I'm gonna say nav ul-lia, and here I'm gonna say hover. So as we're hovering, what would be our styles, right? So the first style that I would want to actually add is actually color black. So as I'm hovering, I would want them to be color black. So I'm gonna say color, and not clip, actually color over here like this, and I would want them to be black as I'm hovering. And also I would want them to have a border as I'm hovering. So I'm gonna say 2 pixels solid red over here like this. And we would want a border radius to be, I don't know, something like 0.5 EMs, something like this. So now that as you can see, as I'm hovering over here, you can see that I have this red button. The red border all around, and you can see the color is actually changing to the black. One more thing that I would want to add is actually class over here active, so it's all the time stays the same color. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to go to the href, you can see over here, and I'm going to say that this link is going to have a class. The class is going to be active, right? And over here within our style, we're just going to say that we would want to style a class active. So we're going to write a active over here like this. This is going to be our class. And within the class, we would just want to say that class is going to be color green over here like this. And over here, we're going to say that the border is going to be a solid green also. So we're going to say border, and it's going to be 0.2 EM solid green over here like this. And after that, we're going to say that border radius also would want some, right? So what we're going to say is border radius is going to be 0.5 EM. So now that we have a border radius, you can see we have these nice round corners. Now, what I don't want is, you can see as I'm hovering, I don't want to include this class active, right? So you go over here and you add a pseudo class. So you say not over here like this, and you write that class active, right? So something like this. So now you can see what's going to happen as I'm hovering. It's actually nothing is happening, because I actually added over here a exclusion. So when we're hovering, we're actually not going to be hovering over our active class. Now we're pretty much done with styling for now a nav. So you can see that it's actually spanning all across as I'm changing the screen. So we're going to have to fix that with a media query. And also let's add over here, let's style with this header, right? And later on, we're going to add this as a button, right? We're going to create this logo as a button. So let's go ahead and let's keep styling the header. So what I would want to do is with a header, I would want to say a header. So this is, I'm going to be selecting the header. And I'm just going to say that the margin is going to be 0. And over here, would want a background image. So I'm going to say a background image. And the background image is going to be a URL over here like this. And it's going to be beans over here, this one. Right, so we're just going to have to save this and pretty much refresh it. And now you can see that this is my background image. Now we're obviously going to be changing the height so it all looks better. But just for now, this is what we want. And later on, we're going to add a padding over here like this, 3M. And after that, we're going to say that we would want a text align center. And after that, we're going to say that border bottom. This is going to be a border in the bottom. This is what we want, border bottom. And that should be 0.5 EM solid chocolate. Something like this. And after that, we're going to say the text would want to be a white. So color white, right? So now you can see our text. Now after that, let's go and start actually styling over here these headings, right? So over here, I would want to say a heading. So I would want to say heading 1. And what would be the properties that I would want to change? So it's going to be font size over here, like this. And here I'm just going to say that I would want to be something like 8 EMs, right? So now you can see how massive right away they became. And then I would want a padding top over here like this. And I would want to say that it's 0.5 EMs. And over here, we're going to say that it's going to be a margin bottom, right? Margin bottom. And this is going to be 0.75 EMs. So now you can see that I created a little bit more space so they're not all stacked up together. Now after that, I would want to style a paragraph within that header. So I'm going to say a header paragraph. So here we have a header, and we're going to say that this is going to be a section. And this, we can write this section, we cannot write this section, it really depends. If we're going to be adding some other paragraphs, we can write this section. So it would be more clear if we're writing a section, but let's say just for the sake of it, I'm just going to skip it. And I'm going to say header paragraph over here. And I'm going to say that, again, I would want a text align to be center. And after that, we're going to say that we want a margin top, like this. And the margin top should be like 1 EM. And after that, we're going to say that we would want a margin bottom also 1 EM. So now we're creating a little bit more margins, and then we're going to say that we will want a font size over here like this, and font size should be like 2 EM, something like this. So now I can see how our fonts are getting better. And the font family, we're going to say this is going to be actually fantasy. So we add a fantasy over here. And after that, we're going to say that the line height should be like 1.2 EMs. 1.2 EM, right? So now you can see how our line actually, line height got bigger. Now after that, I would want to style this anchor tag. So I'm going to say that I would want to style a anchor tag that has a class button. And I'm going to say that over here, it would be display as inline block. So display and inline block over here like this. And after that, we're going to add some other properties. And this is going to be a text transform property over here. So it's going to be text transform. And we're going to say that this is going to be uppercase. And after that, we're going to say that this is going to be background color red. Background color. And it's going to be red. Now you can see that we have this nice background color. And then we would want actual color to be black, the font color. So we're going to write black over here. And then we're going to say that it's going to have a margin 1 em, and then it's going to have a padding 2 em, right? So padding margin, and after that we're going to say that text decoration is going to be none. So text decoration none over here, and then after that we're going to say that we would want a nice rounded corner, so we're going to have a border radius, and we're going to say the border radius is going to be something like 2 ems. So we're going to make it pretty round, right? So now we're done with that. Let's add the style as we're actually hovering over. So I would write over here a class again, but in this case I'm just going to say that this is going to be when we're hovering. Hover over here like this, and I'm going to say that I would want a background color to be black, background color black, and over here I'm going to say that color should be white, right? Color white. So now you see what happens as I'm hovering. You can see that actually background color is black and the color is white. Now we're pretty much done right now with a styling. However, you can see that we haven't worked with this button, so as I'm clicking nothing is actually happening. And we also would need to change the fact that we actually worked with the smaller screen, right? But obviously, as we're making our screen bigger, we would want our navbar to actually change as well, right? So we're just gonna have to add some things over here, and let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and create a media query, and over here I'm gonna write that this is gonna be media, and this is gonna be a screen over here like this. And here we're just gonna have to say a specific width, right? So over here I'm just gonna say minimum width over here like this width, and this should be something like, I don't know, 500 pixels, right? So this is, we're setting the rules when we're actually going to be changing the size of the screen. And for our navbar, it's going to be really basic. We're just going to say nav ulli, and this we would want to be display inline block over here, inline block. And also next thing what we want to do is actually add a width over here like this, and I would want to say that this is going to be something like 8 ems, right? So you can see what happens as I'm actually going to be creating my a page bigger. You can see right away they're actually display inline block instead of block, so you can see how it actually changes my layout of my page. And the only thing we would actually need to add is over here this background color, right? This is the one that's actually messing with us, right? So what we would do over here, we're going to create another rule, and we would say that we would want a nav to have the same background color. So I'm going to say background color, and I'm just going to find where the hell it is. Somewhere. So it's 555. I mean, I could have just written it, right? But I'm just going to copy this in this case. And I'm going to say that background color should be something like this. So I'm going to paste it. And again, let's check it out what we have. You can see that as we make our screen bigger, actually how much nicer it looks when it's actually styled inline block. So now that we're done with that, let's actually go ahead and create this logo as a button, and we're going to use a jQuery for that. The first thing we would need to do is actually add the jQuery, right? So over here I'm just going to open a new Google, and I'm going to say that this is going to be a jQuery Google, right? So jQuery over here, a Google, right? So we're going to see pretty much how to get the easiest way to actually get the jQuery, right? So we go over here to hosted Google libraries, and you can see over here that I have right away a script that how I can add a jQuery to our document. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say copy this over here, and now I can close this and actually minimize this, and we need to go all the way to the bottom of our body over here like this, and I'm just going to add this script, right? So I'm going to paste it over here. So now we have a jQuery. So now that we have added a jQuery, unfortunately nothing has changed, right? You can still see over here as I'm clicking, nothing is happening. So obviously we would need to add a couple of lines of code. So over here I'm just going to write another script tags, another script element, and over here I'm going to create my first function, and I'm going to say that I would want all my code to run only when my page is loaded, right? So over here I'm just going to say that this is going to be document, and this is over here going to be a ready, And here we're just going to say that this is going to be a function, and we're just going to create these empty parentheses, and then we're going to create a curly brackets. So now all the code that we're going to place within over here, it's only going to be running when our page is loaded. And the easiest way how we can actually add this slide toggle function, we can again go back to our good old friend Google, and we can write a jQuery slide toggle over here like this. And the first thing is going to be our API. So we go all the way over here and find where is actually our syntax. So you can see over here, this is going to be our syntax. So we're just going to copy this and place it within here, right? So now what we would want to do is actually use it to our document. So we would have to change these values over here, right? Because we don't have a ID in this case, click me, or we don't have a ID book, right? So we're just going to change this over here, and we're going to find what we have. So we have a class button over here. So let's just change this to class button over here like this, button. And over here, we would want to select our unordered list, right? Because that's the one that we would want to use a slide toggle on. So over here, I'm just going to say navul, and let's check it out what we have. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to refresh it, and now you can see what's happening, right? So we can see that we have a nice button that's actually using as a slide toggle. So over here, if we just make it to the bigger screen, it is still working, right? So this is how easy it is to actually create a responsive navbar that is changing size as we're changing the screen, and also to add this logo over here and use it as a slide toggle button.